Hello, my beautiful friends, my fellow space blobs and sparkles and free spirits and floating out into outer space spirits, and anybody who has felt like recently, especially, they're never going to live the normal life. Is that you? I'm pretty sure many of the people sitting here with me right now are feeling that. For those of us who have never been able to quite walk that path that we were told we should be walking, fit into the little containers and little identities and little career trajectories that we were supposed to follow, and never could quite do it. Just like this, I don't know what this is, but I can't even do it when I try. This is a full moon for you, and I think this has been a really fascinating year so far. All of the full moons we've been working with, all of the energetic shifts, there's something going on here where for those of us who are feeling that kind of call to really live our own paths, accept our weirdness, accept our strangeness, are finding that there's these energy waves that are really nudging us in that direction more and more, and recognizing like that this search for normalcy is just not going to be the thing. It's not going to be the thing that fulfills our heart and our spirit. I was just listening to a session with Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who said in this chat, it was about late blooming. She said, you're never going to be normal, so get over that as fast as possible. And I think this full moon is really nudging any of us who are feeling that call that much closer to it. This is a full moon that's happening on August 19th, and we're about to get into kind of the technical aspects of this, but what I will say is that this full moon is coming with high energy and breakthroughs and this kind of almost like slingshot energy. Like we're pulling back that slingshot and we have all of this ammunition and clarity and energy boosting us forward into our next form. It's a very visionary full moon, and it is going to challenge any goals, dreams, ambitions that are just not connecting to our true souls. It's also going to be a really great full moon for getting clarity of insight about this arbitrariness of some of these social rules and these ways we have to show up and what's valuable and what's not valuable, all of that kind of getting illuminated. And in that illumination, a sense of freedom coming in. So I am very excited to just give us a great groundwork for this full moon so you can work with it and make it your own and just get deep into the good stuff. So let's do it. I mentioned that this full moon is full of energy, and it's very much about looking forward and opening ourselves to how we are changing, coming into new forms. I think Aquarius energy is so wonderful for accepting our constantly transforming selves, and that we never have to hold on to the same identities, the same words, the same titles, the same expressions in a lifetime, that we are in fact allowed to change. While Aquarius is a fixed sign, which is all about the long term, like pulling things, the process of sticking something out and really seeing it through, Aquarius is also deeply tied to change and transformation. And you'll find that with all four of the fixed signs, that while they are fixed signs, they're deeply devoted to true self-expression. And I mentioned that there's all this big energy, right? And that's because this full moon is going to have two T-squares going on at the same time. It's just this very potent energy. And a T-square is when you have two energies opposing each other. So in this case, the sun and the moon. And then you have a third energy squaring off. In this case, it's Uranus and Taurus. And that triangulation creates this really high energy conversation. There's an eagerness to move on things. There's an eagerness to express and share and change and shift rather than just holding the same form. And like I said, this is in fixed signs. The moon in Aquarius, the sun in Leo, and Uranus in Taurus. What an interesting combo. These three fixed signs really are about creative self-expression and how we create art and how we express ourselves and the things we do with our hair and our body and our words, and also the way we allow ourselves to blossom and flourish in life. And this T-square is also happening during Mercury retrograde. And actually the Sun and Mercury are going to be conjunct during this full moon. And so Mercury retrograde's also in this T-square, amplifying this sense of whatever was holding you, whatever routines or rituals that you've been kind of maybe trying to hold on to, old versions of yourselves, just cannot stay. The other thing this T-square is going to be really good at doing is amplifying that Aquarian ability to see the world from a different vantage point. Aquarius is fantastic for zooming out and really seeing things for what they are. And I think that this T-square and this full moon, it's going to be so much about all of the arbitrary rules that we have been taught by culture, but then also some of the arbitrary rules we put on ourselves around what we have to look like, what our schedule has to look like. You know, when you really have those moments, I'm sure all of us here have had a day where you just walk around and you think that is just so strange that is the norm. Like that's what you're supposed to be doing. You need to be wearing the khaki pants because that's professional. And you need to be walking at this speed because that's respectable. And, you know, wax this hair, but let this hair grow out. Wear the power suit, but not in this context. Ooh, the color red is really associated with being a little bit easy. You know, it's just like, what is this? Like, how do any of these come to be, right? And of course, these are always changing as well. Culture will constantly be contradicting itself and flipping things on its head. And suddenly, you know, the khaki pants are too outdated and they're no longer professional, whatever. But my point being, that's what this full moon is like. It's like, oh my gosh, I have felt like I've needed to wake up every day and answer all of my emails immediately at 8 a.m. And that's not true. I don't have to do that to myself. I am, in fact, allowed to maybe wait till 10 o'clock or later in the afternoon to do that. Maybe, you know, you have an idea of like, I have to finish this degree. I have to finish this project. But you're realizing that it's just this arbitrary set date that you put on yourself. So it's like really just a very honest full moon about those things, but also extremely liberating. The other part about this honest kind of full moon that is just amplifying, like you need to become yourself. You need to walk your own path. I was just listening to Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She's doing this. She has this special class that she teaches called Late Bloomer. And she was talking about, you know, this need for normalcy. You need to get over that as quickly as possible. And this full moon, I think, is speaking to that. Any places where you're holding on to patterns because it kind of keeps you safe. It kind of keeps you hidden from being seen, from fully blooming, from accepting yourself, from expressing yourself. This full moon is going to be calling out. You're going to be feeling it. You're going to be noticing it. You're going to be knowing it. This is a fantastic full moon. Take notes. Like let those insights and those clarity of visions come through, because you know what happens. I'm sure many of you have felt this. You know, you'll get that intuitive insight. You'll get that knowing. You'll be like, yes, I know that's true. But then a couple days later, you get back into the mix of things. You got phone calls to answer, things to get done. And it feels like that same old logic is still there. Having these notes can be really helpful for encouraging you to slowly and steadily build into these new patterns. Because once again, it is fixed sign, which means this is about the longer process. While we may have flashes of insight during this powerful releasing full moon, we're also going to then have to follow it up with a sustainable blossoming that isn't about stressing ourselves out or traumatizing ourselves by overextending and trying to blossom overnight, but is instead about supporting ourselves in that blossoming. But one of the best ways to do that is by just laughing at the arbitrariness of all of this normalcy chasing that is existing in this world. And I know many of us have been chasing normalcy because of trauma, because of past experience that has taught us it's not safe to show yourself. And that's another reason why we want to also be thinking about how we can sustainably and safely start to blossom in ways that feel like we're not going to just crash our system. So keep that in mind as well with this kind of big, bold, vibrant, it's almost like enlightenment energy, like the vibrancy, the brightness of this full moon. It's just a thing. So I said that this full moon had two T-squares, and there is another T-square going on at the exact same time in the mutable signs. So meanwhile, while this full moon is just amplifying all of the requirement, like it's time to change. It's time to express yourself the way that you are. It's actually not even about changing. You know what it is? It's about not denying your weirdness anymore. Like, just embrace it. Like, write it all out for yourself. What are the things that you prefer? What are the things that you love? That's what this full moon's about. But at the same time, we have another T-square. We have Venus in Virgo opposing Saturn in Pisces, which I love already right there. Saturn in Pisces just is everything. I love it, love it, love it. The lessons of connecting to soul are so strong there. And they are squaring off against Jupiter and Mars in Gemini. This T-square is about fluidity. You know, mutable signs are really wonderful for bridging between the spirit world and the physical world, between past versions of ourselves and future versions of ourselves, between different versions of the world. So I actually love that there's a T-square in mutable signs because it inherently brings up a sense of curiosity. Where the fixed sign T-square there that the full moon is all connected into is very much about clear sight, getting right to the point, being really honest, having big insights. This mutable T-square with Venus and Saturn and Jupiter and Mars is a lot about the softer curiosity of like, I wonder what's going to happen next. The softer curiosity about what's coming next. And what I really love about that Saturn and Venus opposition in Pisces and Virgo, this is a medicinal sign axis. This is a very calming and loving and nurturing and reflective axis that's about coming back to spirit and our deep intuition. So this T-square is going to be heightening intuitive guidance, intuitive clarity, and really giving us visions of the energetic layers going on. So in some ways, these two T-squares they're focusing on two different things. I think the main T-square there for the full moon is very much about how are we expressing ourselves outward? How are we moving outward into the world? How are we going to build into the next thing and getting visions of that and understanding the arbitrariness of the physical world and the social rules and all of that, and laughing at normalcy and reveling in our strangeness and getting excited about that. And then this softer mutable T-square is amplifying the energetic process behind the scenes and our soul and the wisdom there and the quiet voices. So we've really got two very powerful T-squares going on. And this full moon with these T-squares and the way that those are all working together is really fascinating because it is, full moons are always about releasing, right? They're about a pouring over into our next phase and just letting go of whatever we worked on the month before and opening to the next thing. These T-squares are really like, it's time. If you're trying to keep walking that same normalcy path, whatever that is even, because none of us are actually on the normal path, even when we think we're on the normal path, we're just simulating it for ourselves and stressing ourselves out. So there's that. It's not going to work anymore. So what are you going to do? What are you going to let lead you forward? And I think a lot of us already know the answer to that. I think even sitting here, it's not the full moon yet. I'm doing this chat a little before the full moon. A lot of us already know all of these answers. Nothing is actually going to be that new with this full moon insight about what we need to let go of and what we need to deeply and radically accept about ourselves. And that's a good question, I think, to just like pause a moment on. What elements of you, strange preferences, maybe you think they're strange, but maybe they're not strange. Maybe they're just you, but maybe embracing that most people around you don't have that preference. That's amazing. Lean into that, maybe physically you don't work the same way as everybody around you. You have a different body. You have a different digestive system. You have a different health level than everybody around you. That is beautiful. even if it's really hard and sometimes just the hardest thing ever in your life. Like all that self-shaming about the fact that we can't live up to the normalcy is where the pain is, where some of the deepest pain is, I would say. And this full moon is about embracing all of that, all of the mess. 10 of Swords came out. You know, I'm going to do some tarot here at the end of our chat. I love that. It's very full moon energy. It's very full moon in Aquarius energy because it's like one of the things I will say about this full moon, and it ties back actually into the full moons in Capricorn we just were having before this full moon, that it's like there's this whole Pluto thing going on where Pluto is shifting between Capricorn and Aquarius, kind of figuring that out. And Pluto will finally move into Aquarius in November this year and stay there. So no more Pluto in Capricorn. Some of you, I think, will be very excited about that. But there's this whole thing going on the rest of this year where there's this understanding that cycles are closing and opening in like this really specific way, where if you have a persona that has kind of been getting you by, but you're also really enervated and tired and just kind of over it, like you're going to get called many, many times to face yourself and the Tower. You know, why not? Let's talk about this. I'm going to pull a third card because I think we need that. Tower in context is very important. And then 7 of Swords. Okay. I love this because we get a chance to talk about Tower in a context that I think is really, really important. So the Tower, I want to just skip straight to the Tower at the center of this reading because I think it's important. The Tower works on a lot of different levels. A lot of times you'll hear that this is about sudden disruptions. And, you know, we're working with that Uranian energy. Uranus is squaring off intensely with the sun and the moon and creating that energy. But the Tower never actually does come from out of nowhere. And I'm not talking about like divine retribution, or you haven't been having high vibe enough thoughts, so you brought it on yourself, you manifested the disaster. No, definitely not going there. What I mean is that the Tower is about that deeply, deeply personal experience of change in yourself. When, you know, you just can't hold the same form anymore. Like, to hold that same form is to be locked in the Tower, is to be locked in past versions of yourselves. And that hurts. That goes against soul. That goes against blooming. That goes against everything in us. And that's why sometimes, you know, and a lot of times we resist it. And there's no shame in that. There's no shame in resisting it because it's scary to change. It means this kind of lightning strike opening of ourselves. It means that something is going to burn away. Something is going to crumble. Something is going to break open, whether that's our hearts or a perception of ourselves or a project or a place we're living. Like, and I'm not saying that this full moon is going to bring about those kinds of events that are happening right on the full moon. This is speaking to a much broader, bigger process that's been building and culminating. And when we know that this is natural, that this is a part of the process, we can stop feeling so much shame and judgment about the fact that we are longing for new expression. That's what the Tower is really about. It's about the ultimate expression of longing for our next form. And when you see that in the context of these other cards, I think that's really important. The 10 of Swords is about giving up the fight to stay on that quote unquote normal path, to try and shove yourself into that little square box. Like, just give it up. Get over it as quickly as possible, as Clarissa Pinkola Estes says. Get over it as quickly as possible. If you notice you keep trying to make your goals about getting into that little square box, I want you to call it out on yourself. Notice, because I do it all the time. Like every week, I tell you what, I will have a goal that is absolutely about trying to get in that square box. And you know what? Every time it feels like soul death. So that's what this 10 of Swords is all about. And that's what this Tower is all about. Where are you trying to force yourself to fit into the Tower? Where are you trying to force yourself to fit into the path? Same goes for 7 of Swords here. This is so fascinating to me. 7 of Swords is about the persona trying to sneak around and get away with things because it feels like you can't just be your true self in the world, so you have to hide it a little bit. And this is always a card to remember. that if you feel like you have to hide your true self and sneak around, there's something more going on there that's really important to listen to. That sense that you're getting away with something if you just want to be who you are being. So it's just a moment to reflect on that as well, on that feeling, on that element, and notice where you feel this pressure to keep sneaking around in your own life, to keep sneaking around, even just to yourself. It's not always about the performances we have, to our close loved ones and our colleagues and all of that. But like, sometimes I think this card almost speaks more to like ourselves, like the places like we just feel like, well, I'm not allowed to have that preference, I'm not allowed to prefer this other lifestyle, or to not be interested in that version of work or identity or lifestyle. Like there's this calling for honesty there. I love all of these cards, honestly. But I mean, yeah, it can seem really intimidating. And I want to reiterate here. Full moons, they can bring culmination. They can bring very clear insights while they're happening. But it's not the job of the full moon to allow that energy to move and work. Like that's something that will come and flower in its own time. What full and new moons help us do is get vision, connect energetically, understand, embody a little bit. But then, the process is up to us. So if you're looking at these cards and feeling like you are not prepared for that August 19th full moon, I just want you to know this is a supportive full moon. It's excited to see you blossom and live your life and be on your path, and maybe even just take one evening to imagine what it would feel like to be you in the world, unedited, unabashed, even if that's not something you can wake up tomorrow and do. Because once again, we don't have to force blooming overnight. That's just too much to ask of anybody. So anyway, I'm going to be doing a practice over on my Patreon for this full moon. We're going to be getting into all of the arbitrary labels we've had to carry on our backs throughout our lives and letting them go. It's going to be such an awesome, cathartic, beautiful practice that'll be super helpful for this full moon. So I'd really love to see you there. You can also join me for all of my wild dreaming practices that I developed and that I use every single week of my life and share with you over there. And also this autumn, we are going to be getting into the minor arcana of the tarot. And I'm going to be talking about these natural rhythms in life that do not follow the mechanized way that we often are taught we need to be thinking about our life and our values. So I'm really excited for all that I'm going to be offering over on Patreon. You can also join my upper tier where we gather once a month and we talk about life and energetics and deep dive on topics. I'd love to see you there for that. And back here, because we have so much more to talk about. I really want to make a Saturn video, a Chiron video, talk about some of these deeper topics and just really get into the nitty gritty. I love you, beautiful, sparkly space blobs, free spirits, sparkles, however you like to define yourself. It's just so amazing to get to share this space with you and explore life together. So let's go figure out how to express ourselves more in this lifetime. I will see you back here so very, very soon.